Okay, so now we will hand it over to Arielle and Julia, who will talk about radical feminist lesbians at the Berlin Dyke March. Over to you, Arielle and Julia.
My name is Julia, and I'm joined with my friend Arielle. We were both participants of a kind of lesbian feminist action at the Berlin Dyke March this past summer. And so, as Arielle said, I will give some context about this action, and then she can explain more about what really happened there, and the political impacts of all of that. So just for some context, in Berlin, there exists the Berlin Dyke March, and it is written with an asterisk after the word dyke. In the German language, the asterisk or the star, Sternchen, it's used to say that whatever word it follows is inclusive of everyone who wants to be part of that word. So if the asterisk follows the word woman, Frau, it means this word Frau not only refers to women, Frauen, but also anyone else who wants to be a woman on that day. And so this holds true for the Berlin Dyke March as well. The Berlin Dyke March is written Berlin Dyke asterisk March. This event is absolutely inclusive, and it was always intended to be inclusive. Since maybe 10 years, it's been happening in Berlin and growing slowly over time. It's for lesbians and friends. And the stated intention of this event, of the Dyke March, is simply to increase lesbian visibility. This is a bit contradictory because they use the asterisk. But anyway, this year, the organizers said that everyone is welcome. All lesbians are welcome. All friends are welcome. Everyone is welcome. It's super inclusive. And that's always been the case. So there was a group of lesbian feminists who had been witnessing the developments in lesbian communities. And we wanted to hold the organizers at their word. If they said that every lesbian is welcome, then lesbian feminists should also be welcome, right? Some of the lesbians behind the scenes who were also part of the organizing team for this lesbian feminist bloc had already organized a demo in October of 2023, and that went pretty well. And so we thought, okay, let's try to join the Dyke March. So we planned to have a block. Basically, we would be in the formation of a square marching together with signs that were pro-woman, woman-centered. But I'd like to quickly read from the statement that we published on our Instagram page. And the statement clarifies like why we did this. So it says simply, I won't read the whole thing. I'll read part of the beginning just to give you an idea of what we wanted to do and why. So it says, we are a group of lesbian feminists who believe in the power of collective political action. Lesbian visibility is a key element of our feminist politics. So for this reason, we want to be visible as lesbians and feminists. This is why we participated in the Unified Lesbian Feminist Bloc in the 2024 Berlin Dyke March. The statement continues to say, for several years, lesbians like us are pressured to soften, suppress, or recant our feminist politics. We recognize that, unlike our lesbian feminist foremothers, the zeitgeist is currently against us, but we refuse to be fearful in silence. We want to encourage other lesbian feminists to become active participants in lesbian culture. We want to take up space at an event that should include us. We exercise our right to attend the Berlin Dyke March as lesbians and feminists. So you can read the rest of the statement in full on the Instagram page. But that's a bit of the context of what was happening and what we got into.
Okay, so we were a pretty good group and we gathered there. There were other groups, but I would say we're the most visible limited group with our lots of signs and chants and everything. So we had beforehand prepared and gathered together to repeat some chants and to have a look at signs and to see how we could organize also on the security side to be sure everybody's safe, which is super important. And so we arrived there. There were already a good police presence. So when we started the march, there were a lot of people, but we were not the first. We were pretty front, but there were other groups of lesbians in front of us, and we could actually carry our sign pretty safely. And we had prepared a lot of signs that were very lesbian centric, I would say, because we wanted to put a focus on what we considered are the relevant topics around lesbian and lesbian feminism, like the critiques of porn, the critique of the way gender dysphoria is handled today, and also just using lesbian-centric vocabulary, like no asterisks, no point, no inclusivity language, just talking about lesbians, and which is already, unfortunately, today an act of resistance. So we went there with our signs, and it was pretty safe at the beginning, and we had reactions from people, like middle fingers from queer groups and other demonstrators. Nothing physically violent though, for maybe the first 30 minutes. And at some point, we arrived into a narrower street, and a group of more violent activists and trans activists, obviously, surrounded us and really created this kind of very claustrophobic atmosphere around us. So we had to protect ourselves, and also thanks to the police presence who escorted us and who physically protected us, but they were screaming us to leave, and they were super angry about some of our signs. I think the sign criticizing porn received some hate, and my sign, I think, received also a lot of hate because I had made a pretty big sign. I'm just going to explain the context of this sign a bit, because I think it also triggered a bit the people at the demonstration, the other demonstrators. I was front row with a big sign written on it: "Gender is the cause of dysphoria, not the solution." So it's a sign I saw during a feminist Women's Rights Day demonstration in Berlin in 2020. Like, a super brave woman was carrying it, and she was a bit alone, and I was super impressed because the reactions can be a bit violent. And so I did this sign, I repainted this sign, and I was not really expecting to have a big dialogue on that day with people about that topic, but maybe just trigger a certain contradiction in the movement. And that I was hoping, and I'm still hoping, that women saw it, some women saw it, and women who support the transgender system, and to make them ask themselves what they're supporting. Because if you remove biology from the debate and the sense of what men and women are, you're left with the same stereotypes that are alienating women. So I wanted just maybe that at some point they can remember this sentence if they have a feeling of contradiction in their queer groups and queer discussions, and that maybe triggers some questions.
But what happened to this sign?
The sign got torn apart. No, just beheaded. Yeah, they went after it, but they went after also the big banner that we had on the front, which was just saying, lesbians forever. No, like something very
Something like our love for women is our strength.
Yes, like nothing controversial. So they like nothing. None of our signs were violent anyway, so we weren't targeting anybody.
Can you say what happened when we were eingekesselt, when we were like totally surrounded?
Yes, so they surrounded us. Someone threw also an apple trunk at us. They were also singing in front. I mean, yes, the police was forming a row in front of us at that point, so that the group of trans activists could not hurt us physically. I think I saw someone from, was it a minister, a journalist, a trans-identified man who's a journalist, who was also like yelling a lot of very aggressive things at us, basically telling us to leave. The organization was also there. They were not supporting us, but they could not expel a group of lesbians from the Dyke March. So they stood up to what they had said from the beginning. Yeah, we, I guess, stuck together. It was a pretty violent moment, I think, for everyone. It was difficult to defend ourselves, but we did, and we also wanted to stand there and to say that we belong there more than trans identified males, I think.
Do you remember what we were singing? Because as
yes, thank you.
we were surrounded, we just sang the whole time. Or we
Well, yeah,
chanted.
yeah, we were singing Viva Viva Lesbiana, and we were doing these signs also with our hands, and we were also singing this chant that we have that says lesbian all together rise up and shout out and say no. And it was really nice to sing together in that moment, to also comfort each other a bit.
I learned it from Paula Bolton, actually, who's doing a lesbian strength march in Leeds right now. Shout out Paula. So it's a song that I learned from her, but then we changed it to be about lesbians. So lesbians like us, join hands together, or link arms together. Lesbians all over the world, rise up and shout
no.
No. Yeah. We were just singing that like over and over and over.
Yes. And Viva Viva Lesbiana a lot.
Too many times.
No, it was great. I mean, it was perfect. We did very well.
And we could rejoin the march too.
So we finished the march. Yeah, the police escorted us, and at the end we were at the back for safety reasons, I guess. They wanted to avoid any physical confrontation, but we could finish the march, and then we could stay together and also talk to maybe one or two women who had questions about what we're doing, and we could keep on with the discussion a bit after the march, where the tension was going down a bit. And yeah, I think it was important, and yeah, I'm glad we did it.
I'm glad we did it too. And just as a final note, there is going to be something next year in Berlin in June. So check the Instagram. I put it in the chat, lesbian.demo.berlin at Instagram. And there will be some more updates. Yeah, we're not going to stop.
One thing is just to note, as people were noting in the chat, it's telling that they got angry at your anti-porn sign, right? That tells us something. And I also just wanted to offer that in some previous marches, in terms of singing, some of us, when we get attacked, have sung the woman, adult, human, female song, which becomes very disarming. People become very confused when a bunch of women just start singing woman, adult, human, female. They just become very confused and disarmed. So my question for both of you, with respect to the people who were attacking you, I'm wondering if they were mostly male, who, men who call themselves lesbians, or female. And part of the reason I'm asking is because I have found, when I've done my own activism in this, that there are a lot of women who will oppose us, right? There are a lot of women who will stand up for the men who are calling themselves women, but it's the men who are really, really scary. And so the women will act kind of strange and bang on pots and pans and shake their heads and whatnot, but they don't tend to act in very threatening ways, which the men do. And I'm just curious if that was your experience or if you had a different experience during the march.
The very first people who came in front of us were two guys in like long dresses, skirts or whatever. Like I would assume that they do not consider themselves to be men. And they were carrying this banner that said queerocracy now. And most of the people who I heard leading the chants against us had very deep male voices. There were a lot of women also shouting along.
I would say it was half.
Mm.
Probably half male, whatever they think of themselves, and half women. And physically, the men were a bit creepy, I agree, because one also had a t-shirt just in front of me with it was written on his t-shirt, perverse, like pervert, or perversistan, something with the word pervert in it, like the reign of perversity, something like that, just in front of me. So I knew a bit who I was talking to. And but there were young women also. I noticed pretty, maybe 20-year-old women were in front of me, and I was at the front at some point. It's pretty long, so I could really have a good overview of who was there. And definitely a few trans-identified men with lots of porn codes on the style and things like that. So the same sample as we've seen before.
I mean, when we were stopped and surrounded, we were in a really narrow street, and the entire rest of the march that had been behind us had to like squeeze around us. And so there was no way for anyone not to see what was happening. And then I think by being forced to witness what was happening, a lot of the women who were in the march actually just joined in, because the people were saying, what, TERFs go home? TERFs verpisst euch. Yeah, TERFs fuck off.
Kind of vermisst euch.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna miss you. I have to. I'm remembering now that when I was holding the one of the banners on the front, 2 times or 2 or 3 times, people tried to tear it,
Yeah.
and it was always men. I had to. They were pretty strong. So
They got your sign though.
yes, we got almost everything. Yes, it's still there, decorating my flat.